Ugh, this phone drives me crazy.
Excuse me, I'm the Sprint intern from Sprint. Try my new iPhone XR with an amazing liquid retina display.
This is amazing. Mind if I snap a few photos? Look at that color. I love this display.
I'm gonna need that back.
Switch to Sprint and get iPhone XR 64 gigabytes for $0 per month with an eligible trade-in and a Sprint Flex lease. Visit a Sprint store, sprint.com/iPhone, or call 1-800-SPRINT1.
Phone $0 per month for 18 months after $31.25 per month. Credit applied within 2 bills. If cancel early, remaining balance due. Excludes tax. Subject to credit. $30 activation fee. Coverage and offer not everywhere. Restrictions apply.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. I'm your host, Janet Care Lessin, with my co-host, Karen Christine Patrick. And today we interview crop circle investigator Joanna Emery. And Joanna was born in London, England, but was raised in Canada. She holds a BA in history from McMaster University in Hamilton. She has always been down to real-life mysteries and began researching crop circles in 1999 after purchasing an intriguing crop circle calendar from a local bookstore. Hoping to learn more about the phenomenon, she then began to volunteer with the Canadian Crop Circle Research Network as their Ontario coordinator. Joanna has personally visited many formations across the province, as well as those in England, and has attended numerous conferences. Although CCCRN is no longer active, Joanna feels that the crop circle phenomenon is too important to ignore and now hopes to continue crop circle research in Canada so any future formation reports can be documented. She will be speaking about her experiences in crop circles and what the message may be behind those mysterious glyphs at the Alien Cosmic Expo. Check my calendar. Oh, where's June? Hold on. June 24th, 25th, and 26th in Brentwood, Ontario, which is near Toronto. We're flying into Toronto, my husband and I. We will be at that conference. So before we bring on Joanna, Sharon, what would you like to say?
Oh, I'm very excited always to talk about crop circles. I have a Facebook group, the Earth Anomaly Research Society, and this is one of our topic areas. We like crop circles, sinkholes, pyramids, weird weather. That's the kind of stuff we like. So I will absolutely be checking out any website she gives us at the end to share with our friends. We've got them all over the world and probably Canada also. So I'm really happy to be talking about that today.
Me too. It's a very exciting, interesting topic, and I'm wondering, I get behind because I'm doing so many other things. So it's like having a researcher come on and tell us the latest, what's going on, what are they finding. So Joanna Emery, welcome. Thank you for coming to our show today.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
We're really happy to have you here. So what would you like to tell our listeners about yourself that wasn't included in your bio? And tell us a little bit about your research. And you may not be limited just to crop circles. We're all just getting to know you. Tell us your interest in research and all that good stuff.
Sure. Well, I as you mentioned, I became interested in crop circles over 15 years ago. As it said in my bio, I found a calendar and I thought, this is really interesting, and I read as much as I could, and I became involved with a nonprofit research group called the Canadian Crop Circle Research Network that had started in 1995 to investigate this phenomena in Canada. Because, as everyone knows, it's been happening quite a bit in England for the past few decades, at least in the media for the past few decades, and at other places in the world. But there really wasn't anything in Canada until 1995. And lo and behold, when I started becoming interested, there were some crop circles reports to investigate in Ontario, where I live. So I was able to go see some and document them. And at the same time, over the coming years, I also went to England to see crop circles there as well, and to speak a bit about Canadian crop circles. In the last few years, the scene's sort of changed a bit, and unfortunately, the Canadian Crop Circle Research Network didn't continue. But I've decided to try and set up my own blog and document any future reports we get, because I think this is a really important phenomena.
So, what are they finding out? Are they still doing the research into the the reaction with the stalks and how they're, twisted, and there's different. I'm not an expert by any means, but there's different ways to tell a natural. It's something that Barney and Betty and whatever Joe all made compared to the ones that are real. Are they finding out anything else that might add to this quote-unquote evidence that this is a real crop circle?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about the Canadian ones is that, we're a huge country and small population for such a big country. And these crop circles have been happening, in fairly remote places like the Prairie Provinces, Saskatchewan, and that. And in contrast to the ones in England, a lot of these huge wheat fields and everything don't have what they call tram lines. The crops are usually crop dusters spray from above instead of using tram lines as they do in England. So a lot of the Canadian formations were discovered by crop dusting pilots, people just flying over, and or by farmers themselves harvesting. So there's a lot of interesting things happening about these crop circles that we've been discovering that shows and actually goes to prove that this phenomenon is not all hoaxes, that there's something very real and very interesting going on. There have been some studies done on Canadian crop circle formations over the last several years. A lot of these studies were done with the Burke Levengood Talbot Research Group. I think their website's bltresearch.com. And they found some really interesting plant anomalies in the stalks within these crop circle formations. The twisted stalks, the bent nodes, etc. So it's sort of a different scene than in England because again, these formations are found by maybe the farmers or something, and then we were able to do quite a bit of research on them. So that's the fascinating part, and a lot of people look at them and think, oh, they're simple, they're not as elaborate, but that's the whole beauty of the Canadian ones, that you get this formation in the middle of nowhere, and you can really try and investigate and find out all you can about it. And the other interesting thing is that CCCRN was looking into the history too of Canadian crop circles. Did these just sort of start coming up when they became really popular in England, like in the 80s and 90s? And although there's been more documented reports when they did sort of become more popular in England, there's actually probably a lot of history that goes back even further. Like we've actually documented over 200 reports since the early 1900s. So farmers, from the 1920s and 30s and that have said, oh yeah, we saw these circles in the fields, but we never really talked about them, didn't do much about them. So obviously something was happening. And then in 1925, there was an account of a simple one in Alberta, 1941, and there's a few others. But in 1974, there was the first really big media report of a crop circle, and that one involved a UFO sighting. The farmer at the time, he said he saw 5 metallic dome-shaped machines create 5 rings of the depressed swirled grass in a clockwise fashion. So this was really interesting. And it was a case that was investigated by the RCMP. the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Maybe you've heard of them. And,
Yes,
and they this is 1974, and this was in Langenburg, Saskatchewan. It hit the media, and the RCMP concluded that it was not a hoax. And if I can see my sources, one newspaper report stated that if that's, and they mentioned the farmer's name, if that's what he saw, then that's what he saw. And they regard him as a dependable, quiet-spoken citizen, not given to inventing tall tales. And the Canadian press was even quoted one of the RCMP constables as saying, "Something was there. I doubt it was a hoax. And there's no indication anything had been wheeled in or out." And Mr. Fear, that's the farmer's name, Ed Fear, seemed genuinely scared. So this was the first media report in 1974. Way before they started becoming crop circles, started becoming big in the media, and that report actually, because it was in the media, they got a lot of visitors to that formation.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been quite interesting, and then so there's been reports ever since. Every decade since that we can go back to. And in the early 1990s, they really started keeping track, and we had some really interesting formations throughout. We've had them almost in every province in Canada, so across the country. And some of these photos, I'm hoping to get some up on my site, though, of these crop circles. They're just there in the middle of the field, and there's no pathways in, because there's just, you don't see any tram lines, you don't see any pathways, nothing. So it's quite interesting. Yeah,
it's very interesting. Karen, do you have a question for Joanna?
Yeah, I just want to know what I understand about tram lines, because like the ones in England, there'll be the rows of the crops, and then there'll be kind of a pathway thing through it. And what you're saying is, if somebody wanted to hoax it, they would be able to travel along that pathway, tram line, what you're calling it, and if they were going to make one of their own. But what you're saying is that they found ones that because they spray crop, then they don't have any road or access or path for someone. And if someone did walk through the crops, they'd leave a path, basically. So that's what you're saying.
Yes. Now there are. Yeah. Now I live in Southern Ontario, and there are some fields that do have tram lines, but most of the fields in Canadian provinces, like in Saskatchewan, Alberta, breadbasket area, they're huge, and there's no tram lines. And see, in England, a lot of people think, well, they'll just but they'll just walk through the tram lines and try and hoax them there. But when you've got a huge, hundreds and hundreds of acres and no tram lines at all, and wondering how this formation is appearing right in the middle. Now, I should say, though, that some of the formations that they do get in England seem to use, like, whatever energies are creating these crop circles, sometimes they sort of use the natural landscape. It could be a mound in the distance, or there's like Silbury Hill and other famous historic sacred sites as part of the formation. And sometimes the tram line is also kind of used, and there have been instances where you've got like a crop circle on half, some part of say at the end of the field, half of it near the end, and then it continues on the other half of the road. I have seen those before. So.
Another thing I wanted to ask was, I wanted to tell people, because as I've looked into it, that they have this what they kind of dissuade our interest in it by showing these guys strings and boards, and they're tramping around, and they make some kind of geometric shape, and not nearly as intricate as some of the ones I've seen, definitely. But in my opinion, there's a couple of things that make me know that this is not a man-made phenomenon. One of them, unless it's a man from space, right? But one is the fact that that the number of them. And that the number of crop circles, as I read them before, was just a staggering amount. That would have to be an army of people, and they'd have to have a lot of equipment they'd have to bring in without trying to make a trail, So they need a truck or something. So I was kind of going, okay, they're trying to to make us not look at a real phenomenon. And then the other part of it, and you mentioned it earlier, was what makes the crops, fold over to make the pattern. And you talked about the twisted stalks. But what interests me, I thought was like a stunning realization, is the crops sort of very quickly grow, like our muscle bends in our arm. The actual thing grows really fast in one direction, right? Each stalk has a node on it, and it's like it suddenly has a sudden spurt of growth and flops over because one side of it grew faster than the other. So if you could talk about, because that is not somebody stomping around. That's the plant itself being affected in some way by energy that we don't even know about. Because if we did, we would just zap and our crops would be grown, right? That'd be a great technology.
Yeah.
So, if you could talk about that, that's the most convincing thing about this whole phenomenon, I think.
Yeah, and just what you mentioned about the hoaxing, like how did where are these scores and scores of hoaxers that are creating these in so many countries and so many types of crops, not getting paid, I guess, and they have, in the middle of summer, there's only 4 or so hours of complete darkness, really, but you'd need huge lights to be able to do all this. And how are they doing this, on rainy, cold, muddy nights like they do have in England? It's just not rational. But about the stalks, there's a lot of good information on the bltresearch.com website that I mentioned that they have done, and the plant does change in these genuine formations on a cellular level, and they've shown too that it depends also on the time of year. If it's immature crop, then if a formation happens in that immature crop, the changes will be slightly different than it happens later in the season, like just before harvest time. And if it happens later in the season, if a formation goes down, and they've almost found that these plant stalks, the seeds in them are almost like they have super energized. They're like super seeds. They seem to have accelerated growth in that. So that's really interesting. And I've personally seen in some crop circles that I've been in. One was in Hensel, Ontario, which is near Lake Huron. It was quite an interesting kind of pictogram. It was two circular ends with these, I'm almost called them links, in the middle. It was resembling a lot of early ones in England. I found within those circles some crop stalks that were twisted, and they had been they almost looked like they had a little twist in them, kind of in the stalk. And I did speak to a fellow who was an agroecologist, I believe it was, and he says, they didn't know what was causing this, because they didn't say it's not some sort of pesticide. It can't be something something that they know about, really. So it was quite interesting. So those kind of anomalies are really interesting, and I think it's important to document them and everything. And actually, that Hensel formation that I was in, I think it was 2003. It was interesting too, because there's a group in the United States, the Independent Crop Circle Research Association, I believe, ICCRA.org, I think. Anyhow, there's some American fellows who are researching them, and they were able to come up to Canada because it wasn't too far from the border, and investigate that with me. So that was really interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the super seed part of it, I was going to ask about, have people grown the seeds and studied the seeds because I guess they grow bigger crops or something like that. I saw that in China. I wasn't sure what you guys had been seeing in Canada.
You just asked that question. That's great. Go ahead.
Sure. I have heard that some people are, growing them. I don't. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be as much, huge interest in as there should be. Some people we're noticing this and everything, and you'd think everyone would jump on the bandwagon with these seeds, growing super seeds, but I don't think anything widespread's being done right now that I know of. Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I'm an Anunnaki Ancient Aliens researcher, and one of the things that's come to my mind, especially since a lot of the formations have been in the UK and the British Isles for many, 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 many years before branching out, or at least before they were kind of noticed. And that seemed to be where the Anunnakis of the Enki clan went to. And the theory is that this is communication from extraterrestrials, but in the Anunnaki research, we think it may be a communication from Enki because of the works of people like Michael Lee Hill and other people that have deciphered that Enki is also known as Ea. One or two or three of the crop circles revealed that at least the artist of a series of crop circles was Enki, also known as Ea. Do you have people that are analyzing the potential messages within your crop circles, determine they're trying to convey to us and who's conveying it to us?
Yeah. With the Canadian scene, because we actually have such a small population, I'm not too familiar on these specific groups. I do know, however, that there does seem to be a relation between the Canadian crop circles I've investigated and researched and read about in that, and sacred sites like there is in England. In England you've got Wiltshire, and you've got that area containing Stonehenge and the ley lines and Avebury Circle and that. And in Canada, and I guess North America in general, our history, the history is more the Aboriginal, the Native history, and a lot of these crop circles in Canada, they're not too far from sometimes Native mounds, sacred mounds. I know in the U.S. they've had some near Serpent Mound in Ohio, and in Canada, I was investigating one in southern Ontario, in Wollaston, not a whole lot too far from Detroit, but this one was near something called the Southwalled Earthworks, which were Native mounds. So there seems to be some history there too, and of course, there was a really interesting one before I became investigating crop circles, but it was in 1999, so it was a few years before I was investigating, but CCCRN investigated one on a Native reservation, the Six Nations Reserve, and it was really interesting, and the Native fellow who discovered it on the land behind his home on the reservation, he really saw this as a message from, they believe, the Star people, and he said it held profound spiritual importances, and I think now is quite involved in what he thinks, or what the messages are, but basically, in his opinion, a lot of it, or from what he gathered, a lot of it was our need to take care of the earth. So he and a lot of people see these as sort of sacred sites, these crop circles once they appear. And yeah, there does seem to be some correlation between them happening near, perhaps places that are outside of our spoken history, but definitely in the Aboriginal history. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Karen.
Yeah.
I guess I had a question I've never asked a crop circle person before, and that is are crop circles, obviously in crops that mankind, plows the field and plants the seed, and there you go. Do they ever see crop circles in like ground cover wilderness areas at all? Is it other than man-made grown crops?
Sure. It's what we'd call related phenomena. So it hasn't really been figured out exactly is this part of the crop circle phenomena, but it seems to be. It's interesting. One of the things that's been happening for decades actually is that they noticed when they were doing surveys over northern Ontario and northern Quebec and that they'd see these forest rings, big circular patterns in the forest, and these were seen from airplanes who were doing land surveys in areas that are, way remote out there. And if you Google forest rings, you might be able to see a couple photos of these, but they haven't really figured out what's causing this. But they think it has something to do with some sort of, I think it's electrochemical or something. It's almost like a natural type of battery or something happening, in the forests. And these rings can be actually like a mile across or anything like that. And so the actual cause is unknown, but they think it also has to do with something to do with the methane deposits and mineral deposits, perhaps in the area, and creating some sort of chemical reaction, and it's causing these ring-shaped sort of circles. But that's kind of interesting because with the crop circles, we've noticed that they seem to happen too. I've noticed this a lot near electricity towers, those huge ones, and also in areas where there's limestone in the rock substrate. So in England, of course, there's chalk, and these are very porous type rock substrates. And I'm wondering if the phenomena seems to use the natural sort of energies of the area, and with these forest rings, maybe it is part of, it's part of the same type of phenomena, but they're using, something to do with the soil, sort of creating this depression. And what's happening is these trees in the circular area seem to be kind of stunted. So that's kind of interesting. So I'd say it may be related, and it's interesting that the scientists haven't completely figured out what's causing this. And the same thing is actually another related phenomena is called what we call randomly downed areas. Those are areas of kind of, if you look at a huge field, it might be just like a flattened area, and that might be caused by lodging in like too much fertilizer in the crop, or it could be caused by wind damage or anything. But we've noticed sometimes when you have a really geometrical formation, there's lodging in the same field, and the crop is just like flattened over the same way as in a crop circle, but it's just not in a distinct geometrical shape. It's just sort of like a blotch. And they've noticed too that there's been cellular changes in those plants in the randomly downed areas, as well as in the specific geometrical formation crop circle. So I think what's causing these formations may be using the energy, using a type of natural energy. So it's a natural type phenomena, but with some intelligence behind it. That's the whole key, because the patterns are just too precise. They're too discernible by people. They're circles, they're pictograms, they're dumbbell shapes, they're Star of David shapes, and of course in England they're very recognizable, and you get into fractals and mandalas and really almost very spiritual symbols from centuries ago. Like, it's really interesting. And I should mention too, when you're speaking about related phenomena, Chris, I asked before about the ice rings and the snow circles.
Yeah, we were talking about that before the show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the ice rings, there have been some reports of, and you can almost see it. It's like a perfect type of circle in ice, and whenever we get a report of something like this, we'll try and take a photograph and see, is it just natural phenomena, or is this part of whatever energies are creating also crop circles? And the ice is usually very thin, like too thin for somebody to walk in and try and dig out a circle or something like that. And sometimes it seems to be spinning. Now, it could be it has something to do with the underwater currents, but a lot of these ice rings are still hard to explain. And same with the snow circles. If we get any type of report of a snow circle, I will and have in the past tried to check it out, because it's really interesting to document and try and find out what's causing these. Was it a formation in the field the summer before, and somehow the energy is still there on the ground, and then when the snow falls, it leaves the type of impression because the energy is still there. But just to say again, there is an interesting report about a snow circle that did happen in Holland on that bltresearch.com website, and that one was it looked just like a crop circle, and it happened in snow, and it's quite beautiful. Mm-hmm.
I was looking at
fantastic.
pictures while you were telling us all this, and looking at the correlation between that and fairy rings. We're going back to the old world.
Yeah.
And
fairy
the
rings.
Connection. Yeah, fairy rings.
Right.
Yeah. So
that's really interesting, fairy rings, because there is a fungus that does appear in grasses and lawns and that, where it's a type of fungus, and it just creates like a circle, and sometimes the mushrooms grow in it, and it's like a darkened
they're showing all
ring.
these pictures of mushrooms
Yeah.
in a ring. And like what makes the mushrooms grow in a ring? Here's one.
Right. Now some of those might be due to the fungus that's a known kind of, it grows in a circle sort of, and happens on grass. But the interesting thing about fairy rings is the history of them, because it kind of blurs the line. Like crop circles, there have been reports that go back. In England, there's one from the 17th century, I think 1678 and everything, called the mowing devil, based on a woodcut that they had from then. And the description is just like it's not like a circle of mushrooms or anything. It's just like a modern day crop circle. The flattened crop looked like someone had stomped on it. And a witness account of orange ball of light, these BOLs, balls of lights have been seen in crop circles. I've even taken some photos that you see these orbs, and they seem to be like moving or that within crop circles. There's some really famous photos of balls of lights in the British formations. So
right, I've seen them.
Yeah, so the whole history of that's really interesting. Yeah. And we've had quite a few interesting photographs in some Canadian crop circles. People will come visit a formation, they'll take a photograph, and they'll see like almost one was like a weird UFO type. It looked like a flying tray. The woman took a picture, and when she got she took it. It's quite a while ago. I think she took it on film, and then there was a flying tray kind of UFO anomaly showing up in the crop circle when she got it developed. And we've also, there was a formation that happened that I visited in Stewarton, Ontario. It's about an hour outside Toronto, where they have quite a bit of farmland. And the formation itself seemed to, it was discovered by a fellow riding his motorcycle passerby in just a rural lane, and he saw it. He called Canadian Crop Circle Research Network. I went to check it out. It was really interesting. Over the next couple of days, it seemed to evolve. It kind of started off as a triplet formation, and then, a couple of days later, it had a longer pathway part and another more intricate formation. Anyway, it didn't get a lot of visitors, but a few. And one woman who went to visit, she took a picture of herself, or someone took a picture of her in the formation. And then there was this very strange shadow that appeared later, and it almost looked like a shadow of a person, or perhaps, it was really interesting. We didn't know what it was. And so it's not uncommon for people to take photographs within formations and find strange anomalies in them later.
Yes, and they, like you said, they grow. They might start with one part, then you go back.
They can evolve, yeah.
They can evolve. I've seen that in some of the Patty Greer movies on crop circles. Fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, you have any questions?
Yeah, just some of this scientific stuff of people, measuring different kinds of energies and radiation. And I was just wondering if you guys have a good, a team that goes out with instrumentation of any kind, tries to get it, shortly after the formation is formed. Now, what kind of data have you guys been getting from that kind of study, if at all?
Sure, yeah. I wish I did have a team with me. It's just sort of kind of just me right now, because unfortunately the CCCRN group hasn't been active, and it's kind of passed on to me. But I do know that I see. It's so many people think, oh, they just dismiss crop circles as all hoaxes, but that's just, it's the more you research it, the more you realize no, there's this is very valid. But the group I was mentioning about, the American group, the ICCRA.org, I know that those fellows have their radiation detectors, and they've got a lot of scientific things, and they've much more scientific background than me. So I know that they bring a lot into that when they do get a report of a crop circle. For myself, I don't have a huge scientific background, so I'm really just trying to document them and then measure them, have aerial photos if possible, and but I do know that people. I think one thing that'd be interesting is people have gone out dowsing with dowsing rods, and they've noticed the dowsing rods reacting within the crop circles. I did notice at one crop circle that I visited in Georgetown, Ontario, when it was reported to me, I couldn't get out that night, but I could get out early that morning. So I drove out. There was about an hour from my house, and I went there. And I must have been either the first, if not the first person, one of the first persons in the crop circle. So I got there super early, and it was fascinating feeling being in a crop circle so early. The lay of the crop itself was very puffy. It definitely wasn't mechanically flattened. It sort of had that gently laid down feeling to it, and look at it. And I noticed it was very quiet early summer morning, and I noticed this electric staticky sound, and I'll never forget that. It almost sounds like pulling clothes out of a dryer, that kind of pulling apart electrical sound. And unfortunately, I don't have any equipment with me, but there was definitely some sort of electrical energy there. Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. I just found like a Canadian crop circle. There's a thing on Open Minds TV / Canadian - crop circle resembles UFO, and they've got quite a long article there. So did you submit that to them, or did they? Monica Hawley, somebody taking pictures, people walking in it.
Not too sure which one that is. I don't think Open Minds TV. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a picture of it with me. I don't think it was me submitting that one. But sometimes people, see a crop circle in that, and they'll take photographs and everything, and then submit them to whatever. But I'm hoping now that they'll be able to come to my blog or website and mention it, and so we can keep some sort of database of these crop circles, because in the last few years it's been kind of few and far between. I know in England they have a real problem with the farmers being quite upset, with people coming through their land, et cetera, and it's quite understandable, because they're worried about if word gets out, lost crops and lost revenue and that. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping that I can perhaps be a liaison between the farmers too, if there is a formation, if they want to keep it private, where the location is. Yes, definitely, because you want to respect that. However, if a farmer is open to it, there's ways that people can go visit. They can sort of put a tape around the area, and perhaps collect $1 or something from visitors to recoup the lost wages or from the crop, and that. Because people are really interesting, but we don't want it to get to the point where there's this huge argument between people interested in crop circles. Because it's so understandable.
It's fine for that farmer to charge a fee because he's losing that amount of crops.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he doesn't, extort people, think it's unreasonable, but something reasonable to recover for his crop.
Yeah, and I have to say though that most farmers I've met in in Ontario, and they've been so open to this. I mean, they're as curious as anybody. What's causing this? This isn't a whirlwind, and this isn't he says he was just there the other the morning before, and there was nothing, and then it was raining all night. So how could someone come hoax this, and there's no footprints into the pattern? So they're as curious as anybody, and I think, in my own opinion, I think the intelligence behind this phenomena is trying to gently tell us something, and is placing these formations where people can, learn about them. So I'm hoping that, at least, here in Canada, we'll, respect the farmers' wishes, but there are ways that people can see these and learn about these without, just traipsing through a field or something like that. I know in England there was a farmer who set up who collected like a small amount, a pound or two from visitors, and he donated it to charity, and they raised quite a lot of money for charity.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, but the farmers, as I mentioned, they're just as curious as anybody, and a lot of them are very open-minded about this, which is great.
Who is Dean Brody? The breaking news crop circles are taking over Canada. Dean Brody.
Yeah, well, when I was doing my research, I came across this, and I thought, oh wow, he's a Canadian country music musician. He's a country music star, and he had a hit song, I think, called "Crop Circles," and I think he named his one of his albums "Crop Circles" or something like this. So I haven't spoken, and I think he won a Canadian Country Music Award a couple of years ago or whatever. So I haven't connected with him, and maybe one day hopefully will, because I think he's not far from where I live. So
was he the one that wrote the song that there's a crop circle in my marijuana field?
No, I heard the song that he wrote, but I don't think there was anything to do with marijuana fields. But I think in the past there have been some other bands, they call themselves crop circles, or they've written about crop circles and stuff like that. So it's definitely part of popular culture, has been in the past.
I had a question about Canadian. Oh, we got a shorter time? How are we doing for time?
We have about 15 more minutes. I just wanted to say, I'm looking at the deanbrody.com breaking news, crop circles are taking over Canada. And he's got some pictures of some pretty elaborate crop circles and several videos. So I'm going to add that link to your page on aquarianradio.com. And I encourage people to just Google Canadian crop circles, and you'll see a lot of information there. But these might be your allies that you can talk to, and maybe, they'll help you do the research. Because it does take a team. It's just too much for one person.
Oh, for sure, because I can't drive this. The province is huge. I can't drive around the whole province.
Right.
But,
you can't drive.
Yeah, although I am hoping to. I have some time off this summer, and my husband and I are hoping to go out west and perhaps see some of the areas where crop circles have been reported in the past, and leave some information about my site and that. Yeah, the Dean Brody. I think some of his website might be his marketing for his and maybe some Photoshop things for his album. But if I remember correctly, there may be some crop circle images there, which actually did happen in the UK. A really nice site, if people want to go look at some beautiful British crop circles, is called temporarytemples.co.uk. They have some beautiful. The fellow who's been doing that site, Steve Alexander, since the 90s, I believe. He's been photographing crop circles for that long, and their formations are beautiful. I'm actually going to England this summer to speak about Canadian crop circles at a conference that they have every year. So I'm looking forward to that, because it's been quite a while since I did take some time off from the whole from researching the whole phenomena, got involved in other things, and now I'm back into it. But it's been quite a while since I spoke about formations over in England, although I've done that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Wow, that's wonderful.
It's just something, we can't. I think we need to really pay attention to it. I don't think we can ignore it, and because these formations are really speaking to us in some way. They're very beautiful. It's a very gentle way that I believe a consciousness is talking to us, is opening our minds to something that is changing, I think, in our society. So yeah, I encourage a lot of people to try and find out as much as they can about them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Karen, you had a question.
Well, I was just going to ask, in America, we were all of us dealing in ufology research of any kind is always dealing with the giggle factor about it, almost everything we talk about. I was just wondering how Canadians feel about these kinds of phenomena. Are they generally open? Are they opening up? I mean, what's been the tenor in Canadian opinion?
Yeah, I think it's about similar to the U.S. probably. Yeah, I think it's quite similar. We're so close to you, and the cultures kind of interweave a little bit. But then on the other hand, we've got our ties to the, historical ties to the UK. So, and I think it's true of wherever you are, you get people that are open-minded, interested, and then you get people who they're all hoaxes, and that's that. That's the end of that. But it's really a phenomena. I think that speaks to everyone individually. It's almost like what's the crop circles, especially these beautiful ones that are happening in England, and what does it say to you? What does this bring out of you? And how does this sort of change you in a lot of ways? And that's kind of what brought me back into investigating crop circles. I know what you mean though about the giggle factor. I mean, and I think that's why I kind of went away for a little while. I was involved in other things too, but it's almost like, you get to this level where, you're kind of tired of people telling you all the time, you're crazy, why are you doing this?
Right.
There's, and it's, I'm fortunate my husband has a job, that,
I know.
That gives me the time and that to investigate this. So
that's great.
Yeah. So, but I think there are a lot of good books out there about crop circles. One of the recent one that I read was a Canadian fellow, Gary Bobroff. He's a Jungian analyst, and he wrote a book about crop circles and Jung and the archetype and the reemergence of the feminine. So he's taking this from a very Jungian point of view. I know Jung was quite interested in UFOs, etc. Jung is the contemporary of Freud, from from the early Carl Jung. That's it.
Carl Jung, yes.
Yes. And I was reading his book, and it's quite interesting because the crop circles, he's saying how they bring out a lot in us, and a lot too of these crop circles. There's a lot of synchronicity involved. A lot of researchers, and that of course happened to me too, where they decide to get involved in crop circle research or learn more about it, and then lo and behold, a crop circle might appear near them, and they're able to go visit. Or the fellow who started the Canadian Crop Circle Research Network, he had written about how, and this is in Gary's book as well, how he had this dream one night about these twisting sort of images and everything, and then the next day he was told a crop circle had appeared, and they went to investigate it, and they found those stalks with the twists in them and everything, and he wondered if perhaps he was picking up with some sort of collective consciousness about this. So it's really quite interesting. The website I keep referring to, Nancy Talbot's BLTresearch.com website, she had an amazing first-hand account of a crop circle actually appearing. She was in Holland with the fellow that Robert Vandenbroeks, who's had some amazing experiences with crop circles over the past few decades, and almost seems to know when some are going to appear in his native Holland. She went to visit him, and she'd been there quite a while, and she was kind of frustrated, and she said out loud, why can't this phenomenon be more direct? And then she went to bed. It was like 3 a.m, and then a short time later, this huge light woke her up. Just the light filled the whole room. She got up. She heard Robert downstairs saying, wake up at the same time, and she saw a pillar of light, a tube of light. And then they went out, and there was a fresh crop circle there, and it was just amazing. So you can read up about this experience, but it's almost like the phenomena sort of is connected to the way we're thinking and feeling if we're open to it. Mm-hmm.
Right, they're like responding. I've heard people say, would like to see something, and the next morning they go there and they do see something. So there seems to be, sometimes they respond to the request. Not 100%, but...
No, I mean, it might be subtle. It might be subtle. It might be something that happens, later, but, encourage people to be open about it. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. Is there something you'd like us to focus on?
Well, there's so much in the crop circles.
There's something about the Shroud of Turin in your question.
Yeah, I put that on my website too because I think there's a lot of importance about this. So I've always, as I mentioned, the crop circles I've always been interested in since I got that calendar in 1999. But ever since I was young, I've always been interested in the Shroud of Turin. And my father actually has a medical background and had books on it in the 70s, and it was quite interesting. And I'd read up on that, and so I've always maintained this interest. And that was another mystery. The more I read about it, the more I investigated, did research and that about it, and I realized this isn't a clear-cut, relic where it's a hoax and that's it. Just like crop circles in a sense. I know in 1988 there was carbon-14 dating done on it, and the world kind of said, well, but it's dated to the medieval times, and it's got to be a fake. But again, the more you researched about it, they realized there's something else going on here, and I think the latest investigations, and there are a lot of people still investigating the Shroud of Turin, was that the carbon-14 dating may have been correct, but it was on a part of the cloth that was not representative of the whole cloth. It could have been a rewoven section. And anyhow, there are a lot of theories about why, there's a lot to show that it is a more ancient, it could very well be the burial cloth of Christ as opposed to just a medieval forgery. So I've always been interested in that. And in 2010, my husband and I decided to go to Turin to view the shroud when it was on exhibit. It's only exhibited in Turin, but it only goes on actual public display in Turin, it's once in a blue moon, like a decade or so. But it was exhibited, I think, in in the Jubilee, in the turn of the century it was, and then again, I think several years later. But it was exhibited in 2010. So I thought, well, it may not be exhibited again for who knows how long, although it was recently. But we decided to go. And for me, it was almost like a little bit of a personal pilgrimage, and I'm glad I saw it and everything because I'd been interested in for years. And then part of me has always wondered, what if there was a crop circle in the image of the Shroud of Turin? And lo and behold, there was one. A lot of people called it a shroud crop circle. It happened in England. If you Google it, Shroud of Turin crop circle, you could probably find an article with, I think it was Daily Mail or something, of it appearing. And it almost seemed to be like a pixelated version of the Shroud of Turin face and the back of the Shroud of Turin. And some people recognized it as that, and some people said, well, I don't know, could be. But a lot of people thought it looked like a Shroud of Turin crop circle. And that just that was just a huge synchronicity to me, because I do know that from my research that the Shroud of Turin has the frontal view, but there's also a faint back view because the way the cloth would have been laid down, it would have had the back of the head as well as the front of the head. And of course this crop circle has both the front and the back. And the pixelation is very similar to some crop circles they've had in, I think it's 2001. And so there's the alien disc-looking one with an alien holding a disc.
Right.
And there's also the Chibolton, that's it. And there's also one that's looked very similar to almost a facial figure, like a face on Mars almost. And there've been some really interesting, almost pixelated type crop circles. There was one that seemed to have it was a RCA-BO response, had like the RCA-BO response from 1974. Well, the crop circle appeared that seemed to have the reverse, the response image to it. So yeah,
right.
And a lot of people said, "Oh, well, it's too far gone to believe. They must be hoaxes and that." But people have investigated these crop circles. They've looked. You have to keep an open mind because like these are amazing. Like, how can anyone make this? In the middle of the night, with such precision. And they did notice changes in some of the stalks and everything. And so that Shroud of Turin one was just really amazing for me.
Oh, I'm looking at the images. Yes, it's there's definitely some kind of resemblance there. So
sure, yeah. So who knows
that's
what'll
exciting.
happen again? Yeah, I mean, they push your boundaries. These crop circles, if you keep an open mind, they really push. They really make you think. Yeah.
And some of them look like, it's hard to tell just from a picture if they're real or not. You'd have to go in and all kinds of people make them now, and but they're definitely not the real thing. So it's an exciting field. Okay, we have 4 minutes. Karen, last question.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk or ask about, the ones that had messages in them. And the Arecibo response one was kind of a digital one. And then I was just looking at the alien with the round disc, and I come from the computer field. So we literally could not have that. What people don't know is the bits and bytes on that disc, and you can read a message that's on there.
Yeah.
And we would not, if that crop circle had happened 100 years ago, we wouldn't know what it said, but because there's obviously an intelligence involved, because it knew we could read the thing. And so, that's a bunch of guys with boards. Yeah, sure.
I know, and the fact that crop circles are happening now, when we're able, crop circles are they're meant to be viewed from the air. And the fact that they're happening now when we can, fly over them and everything. If they happened 100 years ago, like, you can't really see them from the air as well. And so now, and also in this digital age, the fact that the information about them can, everybody can learn about them all over the world. Like, the information can be disseminated. That's part of the reason I believe it's probably happening started happening in England. I mean, this is an area where, high technology and that, where the information can go to the world. So, why not now? Why not here?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, we're out of time. Could you tell our listeners one last time your website and how they can reach you?
Yeah. So my website is just a little blog right now, and it's kind of in progress, but it's CanadianCropCircles.wordpress.com. And there's some links there to some really great websites that people can go check out, and some of them, as I mentioned here, too. So yeah, and I'll be speaking about Canadian crop circles at the Alien Cosmic Expo on Sunday, I believe, June 20th. It's last Sunday in June, I think.
Last Sunday in June.
Yeah, in the morning, right?
In the morning. And I'll be speaking the last Sunday in June as well. So, but I'm later in the afternoon. So excellent. Well, I'll meet you there. I'll come up and say hi. Karen, unfortunately, is not going to be able to join us. But I do want to play the commercial, so I'm going to say aloha to everybody. And here is the commercial for Alien Cosmic Expo 2016.
Who are we to say? With all the planets and all the galaxies and all the solar systems, we're the only intelligent life form? We can't. Alien Cosmic Expo. An out-of-this-world experience here on Earth. Your eyes will be open to an exciting lineup of speakers, exhibitors, and copious aha moments. Experiencers, UFOs, extraterrestrials. It's all coming. Alien Cosmic Expo. June 24th to 26th at the Best Western Plus Brant Park Inn. Tickets at aliencosmicexpo.com.
Want entertainment designed just for you? Then check out customizable streaming TV from Xfinity. It makes your life simple, easy, awesome.
Xfinity gives you customizable streaming TV options. Enjoy the most free shows anywhere on any device, and even access your streaming apps right on your TV with X1. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today to learn more. Restrictions apply.